Have you ever looked at an old family photo and felt something was wrong? A silent frame, but it seemed to whisper a message that transcended centuries. In the spring of 2024, at a yard sale in Salem, Massachusetts, a researcher stumbled upon a photograph taken in 1910. The 5 solemn faces of the Whitmore family appeared beneath the yellowed paper, the father standing steadfastly. 3 small silent children and the mother. A mother with eyes looking elsewhere as if pleading for something. Just days after the photo was taken, the family disappeared, leaving no trace in records or the memories of neighbors. Tonight, we follow that gaze from a dusty frame to secret notes, hidden messages, and a web of evil that once controlled all of New England. A story about courage, about motherhood, and about how a pair of eyes can carry a message that transcends time. On a spring morning in 2024, a female archivist who has spent her career tracing America's forgotten memories crouched at an estate sale in Salem, Massachusetts. The Victorian house had belonged to the Hartwell family for more than a century, and now its descendants were clearing out the things that generations had quietly accumulated. She was used to discovering historical treasures hidden among seemingly mundane objects. And then, on a Tuesday morning, among the yellowed recipe books, she found something that made her heart clench: a seemingly unremarkable family photograph. The sepia-toned photograph taken in 1910 revealed 5 faces arranged in the formal style of the period. A stern father in a dark suit, 3 children dressed in formal attire, and a mother sitting prominently in the center of the frame. At first glance, there is nothing unusual about the Whitmore family portrait. The father stands in the standard sturdy posture of early 20th century masculinity, one hand resting lightly on his wife's shoulder in a protective gesture. The 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl, keep solemn expressions as if waiting for the camera to slowly capture their moment. Their clothes reflect the discreet affluence of Boston's middle class during the industrial boom. But in natural light, as she brings the photo closer, one detail makes her breath catch. All the other members of the family look directly into the lens, except the mother. Her gaze is not directed at the photographer but tilted to the left of the frame. The look is intense, urgent, as if trying to convey a message beyond the limits of the camera. Her hands gripped the wooden chair so tightly that her knuckles stood out white against the black fabric of her dress. This was not the serene pose of a mother taking a souvenir photograph. It was something else, complicated, mysterious, hard to name. On the back of the photograph was a faint line, written in careful handwriting: The Whitmore Family, Boston, Massachusetts, September 1910. No further explanation. Back in the office, under the magnifying light, she spread the photograph out on the table. Its sharpness was so sharp compared to the 1910 photos that it was probably the work of a professional photographer. A seemingly small detail, but one that later became significant. She began her search in Boston City archives, flipping through early 20th century records. Whitmore's name appeared here and there: real estate deeds, business licenses, school records. But strangely, the family suddenly disappeared from all official records after September 1910. Normally, middle-class families of that era left behind countless paper trails. Yet here, nothing, as if they had never existed. Doesn't that make you cringe? The turning point came when she contacted Dr. Harold Brennan, a historian at Harvard who had spent decades studying Boston's immigrant communities during the industrial era. As soon as he heard the name Whitmore on the phone, he paused, his voice dropping. Whitmore? It's been a long time since I've heard that name. They lived in the South End near what is now the Medical District. He said the Whitmore family was well off compared to their neighbors. The father, Robert Whitmore, owned a fabric import business that supplied Boston's booming garment industry. His wife, Eleanor, was an educated woman who taught piano to supplement the family income. The 3 children, Thomas, 14, Mary, 10, and the youngest, Samuel, 4, all attended the local Methodist church. But then Dr. Brennan's voice slowed, as if he were feeling the weight of the story. The family disappeared suddenly in the fall of 1910. The business was sold quickly. The house was left empty. And after that, no one in the neighborhood heard from them again. Do you feel a chill run down your spine? The date on the photograph, September 1910, may have been the last time the family was seen before they faded into the shadows of history. Taking the address Dr. Brennan provided, the researcher set off for Boston's South End. She stood in front of the street where the Whitmores once stood, listening to the wind rustling between the old brick walls. Perhaps just by touching each brick, each step, she would find some trace of those who had passed away more than a century ago. But would the past reveal its secrets, or had the Whitmores carried the answer into eternal silence? Boston's South End neighborhood where the Whitmores once stood has changed beyond recognition. Many of the Victorian row houses have been demolished to make way for modern medical facilities. But amid the new concrete, a few old red brick buildings remain silent witnesses to a once bustling community. The researcher carefully knocked on each remaining door, hoping to find someone who had lived here long enough to remember or at least hear the strange story of the Whitmores' disappearance. At the 4th house, the door opened slightly and a voice trembled with age. Dorothy Patterson, 87, appeared, her eyes shining with memory. She was the daughter of immigrants who had lived in the neighborhood since the early 1900s. "Come in," Mrs. Patterson said, smiling slightly and pouring hot tea. "My grandmother used to tell stories about that family. They lived just 3 doors down. She always said there was something strange about the way they left. One day, they were there. The next day, the house was empty." Mrs. Patterson led her to an old wooden chest in the living room, a treasure trove of family memories that had been hidden for more than a century. Inside were faded photos, letters, and a yellowed newspaper clipping from the Boston Herald dated October 15, 1910. The headline made her catch her breath. "Local business owner suddenly closes doors. Family vanishes without a trace." The article briefly described that Robert Whitmore had sold his fabric store to a rival for a bargain price, citing a family emergency that required an immediate move. There was no new address, no way to contact him. Neighbors were concerned, especially since Eleanor Whitmore had been an active woman in the community, involved in church and many charitable activities. "My grandmother said," Mrs. Patterson continued, her voice dropping as if afraid to stir the past, "that in the last weeks, Mrs. Whitmore seemed very frightened. She stopped going to church. She stopped teaching piano lessons, and the children stopped playing in the yard." The words added a layer of fog to the picture that had haunted her for days. A family suddenly quieted, and a mother revealed a look of despair just before she disappeared. Her next step was to find the photo studio where the family portrait had been taken. The sharpness of the photo combined with the professional backdrop suggested it came from a reputable Boston studio from 1910. After hours of searching old business directories, she narrowed the list down to 3 photo studios in the South End at the time. 2 soon closed, but the third, Morrison & Sons Photography, survived, now a modern studio in downtown Boston. The current owner, James Morrison III, great-grandson of the founder, greeted her with the friendly smile of a photography history buff. "We have all our records from 1885, he said, leading her down to the basement archives. There are appointment books, client files, even the original negatives. If the Whitmores ever took photos here, there would be records." In the damp yellow light of the cellar, they patiently flipped through each old leather-bound book. Finally, the words appeared like a message from the past. September 14th, 1910. Whitmore family. Portrait, prepaid, special notes. Special notes, a rarity for family photos of that era. James found the accompanying client file, and there in the handwriting of his great-grandfather, who had taken the photo, it clearly stated, Mrs. Whitmore insisted on several takes. She appeared extremely nervous during the session. Requested that no copies be printed for public display. Extra fee paid to ensure absolute confidentiality. Can you feel the chill in those words? Why was Eleanor Whitmore trembling during a normal family photo session? Why was she so determined to forbid the public release of the photo, which was nothing more than a family keepsake? And most importantly, what was it that made her look away from the camera, her gaze fixed on something no one else could see? These questions swirled in her mind, signaling that the answer, if found, would be more terrifying than any theory. As she continued to observe the photo under different lighting sources, she realized that the frame was still the original frame from that period, as if the wooden frame itself held a secret waiting for someone patient enough to listen. Are you awake? If you're listening to this story on a quiet night, keep your eyes closed, but keep your mind open. Because what is hidden in that old picture frame is about to lead us to a discovery that will make your heart beat slower. The elaborately carved brass picture frame, typical of the early 1900s, was covered with a green patina of time. The patina revealed an important secret. For more than a century, this picture frame had never been removed or replaced. Instinctively, she carefully examined each joint. With a set of specialized tools borrowed from a restorer, she gently pried the picture from its wooden back. And at that moment, something that made her hands tremble appeared: a small folded piece of paper, yellowed by age, hidden behind the picture for more than 100 years. The soft, neat handwriting on the letter made her catch her breath. September 13, 1910, just one day before the portrait was taken. Writer Eleanor Whitmore. Dear Catherine, if you are reading this, the worst has happened. Robert has discovered the truth about Mr. Aldrich's business dealings, and we can no longer pretend to be safe. The man who claims to be our business partner is not what he seems. Robert found documents in his shipments that link him to a criminal network throughout New England. We must leave Boston immediately, but I fear he suspects Robert knows too much. Tomorrow, we will take the family portrait. It may be the last time we will all be together. The last part of the letter made the air in the room quiet. I am writing this letter as insurance against any unforeseen circumstances. I will hide it behind the family photo hoping that one day you will find it. During the photo shoot, I will try to indicate where Robert hid the evidence against Mr. Aldrich. Follow my eyes in the photo, Catherine. That look will show you where the truth is. Now all the strange details of the photo shoot suddenly became clear. Eleanor's gaze, tilted to a distant point, was not random. That was the final message, a guide for her sister to find the evidence. With the letter in hand, the researcher returned to the photograph, this time under digital light. The analysis software allowed her to measure Eleanor's exact angle and direction of gaze. When she compared it to the Morrison Studios 1910 plan, the results gave her goosebumps. Eleanor was looking straight out the studio's front window toward the building across the street. The old Morrison studio had been demolished in the 1960s, but the building across the street where her gaze rested still stood. It was a 4-story brick building that had been a 1910 boarding house, now converted into apartments. Checking the old property records, she discovered a shocking piece of information. Robert Whitmore had rented a small storage room on the 3rd floor of the building under an assumed name. The rent had been paid 6 months in advance, suggesting a well-planned departure. The current tenant, a graduate student named Peter Collins, was fascinated by the story and agreed to inspect the room. Despite several renovations, the basic structure was intact. Based on the perspective in the photograph, she pinpointed a patch of brick that had never been plastered. Hearing their hearts pounding, they tapped each brick. Behind a patch of brick that had an unusual gap, Peter reached in and pulled out something heavy, a small sealed metal box that had been buried deep in the brickwork for more than a century. When the lid swung open, a yellow light fell on the documents inside. The papers that Robert Whitmore had risked his life to hide, evidence of Mr. Aldrich's network of smuggling and crimes, evidence that might have led the family to their fateful end. Can you hear the clock ticking? A seemingly ordinary photograph, a glance off camera, and a whispered letter from the past. All come together to tell the story of a family. Hunted a secret they tried to leave behind, hoping that one day someone would find it and listen. The metal box buried deep in the bricks had lain dormant for more than a century. When the lid was opened, a yellow document emerged inside its pages, silently concealing a dark picture of Boston in the early 20th century. Robert Whitmore, a seemingly normal husband and father, had carefully recorded every detail of criminal network that crept across New England. Among those documents, the most prominent was a thick ledger, every stroke of which was written by Robert himself. In it, he recounted from the beginning of his fateful encounter with Harrison Aldrich, a self-proclaimed wealthy businessman, to the steps Aldrich took to secretly turn the Whitmore family's textile import business into a front for shady shipments. At first, Robert thought he was just signing lucrative textile contracts. But gradually the pages of the ledgers revealed a horrifying truth. Among the legitimate bales of fabric were stolen goods, forged documents, and even clues that weapons were being smuggled across cities from Boston to New York, Philadelphia, and beyond. A historian specializing in early 20th century crime, Dr. Patricia Williams, later confirmed the importance of these documents. She spoke slowly, almost in disbelief. What Robert found was evidence of one of the most sophisticated criminal networks of the time. Harrison Aldrich was not just a smuggler. He was involved in major criminal organizations that controlled the entire East Coast. And then each piece of the puzzle of Robert's wife Eleanor began to unravel. In the metal box, a small newspaper clipping dated August 1910 told of the mysterious death of a Providence businessman who had dared to question Aldrich's business dealings. He had been found drowned in Narragansett Bay just days after expressing his suspicions. Eleanor had heard of such accidents, and she knew her family was on edge. The last document in the box was a shaky note in Robert's handwriting, dated September 12, 1910. Aldrich has begun to have doubts. We must leave tomorrow. If anything happens, please bring this evidence to the authorities. A desperate note and a last will. The picture was clear now. It was the evidence Robert had uncovered that sealed the family's fate. The researcher who found the box began to dig through historical records, hoping to piece together the Whitmore's final days. In the archives of the Portland Press Herald, a small but chilling article appeared dated September 20, 1910. The headline simply read, "Family of 5 killed in train crash near Augusta." The article described a northbound passenger train that had derailed, 2 cars completely destroyed. In the list of victims, the fictitious name Wilson was found. But with other unmistakable descriptions, Robert Whitmore, his wife Eleanor, and their 3 children. They had fled. Boston changed their names to escape, but still could not escape the clutches of their pursuers. An archived railroad investigation in Maine said the derailment was likely the result of a deliberate loosening of the tracks. But due to lack of evidence, the incident was soon classified as an engineering accident. Dr. Michael Torres, an expert on early 20th century railroad crime, explains. It was possible to cause derailments that looked like accidents, and the investigative technology was too primitive to find the culprit. When the passenger list was compared with the documents Robert left behind, a chilling truth emerged. Harrison Aldrich had discovered the escape plan, and he had done it before his family could reach safety. Can you feel it? A train whistle in 1910, the rails vibrating in the darkness, and a small family holding hands in despair. Did they know that the enemy was so close? Did Robert believe that the tiny notebook and letter would survive to tell the story? More than a century has passed. Boston has changed. The streets where they once walked are now only a breath of wind. But thanks to the metal box and the yellowed letters, the Whitmore family's whispers are still there. Soft, persistent, like a message from the darkness. Remember, don't believe in appearances. You can imagine yourself lying, listening to this story on a quiet night, letting each detail slowly pass by like the slow heartbeat of time. How many other secrets are sleeping behind the old brick walls, just waiting for a chance touch to awaken? The Whitmore family's disappearance was never a voluntary departure. It was a murder, cleverly disguised as an accident. The family photograph, taken just 6 days before their deaths, was Eleanor Whitmore's final message to the world. A fragile but powerful clue to the truth about Harrison Aldrich's criminal network. Her eyes, seemingly distant in the moment of taking the photograph, turned out to be a clue to where her husband had hidden the evidence. A silent signal. It took more than a century for someone patient enough to decipher it. From the moment of discovery, the seemingly ordinary photograph became incredibly powerful. It is not just a family portrait, but a testament to courage, a message from a mother who knew she could no longer protect her children but still decided to preserve the clues to protect those she had never met. The shocking discovery prompted the researcher to contact modern law enforcement agencies and experts in historical crime. Although the perpetrators of the 1910 crimes have long been buried deep in the cold ground, the evidence Robert Whitmore left behind is still extremely valuable. Special Agent Maria Rodriguez, an FBI historian, specializing in historical crime, after reviewing Robert's documents firsthand, confirmed their authenticity and importance. These evidences open up an unprecedented window into the activities of criminal networks in New England in the early 20th century, she said. We can't prosecute crimes that are more than a century old, but these documents help us understand how organized crime evolved in America. One chilling detail in the documents: Harrison Aldrich didn't act alone. He was a key member of a larger secret organization called the Atlantic Circle, which operated from Boston to Baltimore from 1905 to 1915. The organization was suspected by police at the time, but was never exposed because they knew how to use legitimate businesses to cover up their illegal activities. To bring the story to a full conclusion, the researcher and Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a genealogist and victims' rights advocate, tracked down the remaining family. Eleanor's sister Catherine, who had waited all her life for news of her family, died in 1965 without knowing the truth, but her descendants still lived in Massachusetts. When they arrived, they met Susan Mitchell, Catherine's great-granddaughter. Susan was stunned by the story. "We always wondered why Catherine kept an empty frame on the mantelpiece," she whispered. She said she was waiting for a photo, but it never came back. Now we know she was waiting for her sister's family to come back. The researcher arranged for the original Whitmore family photo, which had been bought for just $25 at auction, to be returned to Susan and her family, along with all the documents Robert had risked his life to hide. For the first time in 114 years, Eleanor's message finally reached its destination. Not Catherine's sister, but Catherine's descendants. Those who had Whitmore blood in their veins and now knew the truth. When the photo was placed in the family's hands, Eleanor's eyes, which had once made people shiver with fear, suddenly became warm and full of maternal love. It was no longer a look of fear, but the look of a mother sending the truth to the future in every way so that the family's story would not be forgotten. The investigation that seemed like just an old item at an auction led to an unimaginable historical revelation. The Whitmore family photo, an item purchased with miscellaneous items, became the key to opening the story of courage, sacrifice, and determination not to let evil win. Together with the Boston Historical Society, the researcher organized a special exhibition called Hidden Message: How a Photo Exposed 100 Years of Evil. The exhibition features the original photograph, Robert's notes, and evidence of the criminal network that took his family's lives. Thousands of people have visited, many standing for hours in Eleanor's gaze. A gaze that has transcended time, silently guiding the way to justice. Photographers marvel at the way Eleanor used just one look to send a message. Historians praise Robert's meticulousness in his notes. An ordinary man who dared to confront a giant criminal force. At the opening, Susan Mitchell and her family stood in front of the photograph of their ancestors, their eyes filled with tears. Eleanor and Robert Whitmore were just ordinary people, she choked. But they chose to do the right thing, knowing that the price would be their own lives. Their story not only brought belated justice, but also inspired modern investigative agencies. Eleanor's method of deciphering her message, combining historical research, genealogical tracing, and digital technology, became a model for solving many other forgotten cases of the early 20th century. But perhaps most important is the lesson whispered in the photograph itself. Even a seemingly ordinary photograph can hide extraordinary secrets. Eleanor's eyes, once considered a mere absent-minded gaze in 1910, are now understood as an immortal message, a testament to maternal love, to the courage of a family that refused to be silent in the face of evil. Today, the photograph hangs proudly in Susan Mitchell's living room. It is no longer an unsolved puzzle, but a silent memorial, a story that transcends time to remind us that no matter how deeply buried the truth is, it will find a way to rise. Gently, patiently, like Eleanor Whitmore's eyes that have traveled over a century to reach us tonight. Can you imagine? If you look around your room right now, is there a photograph that is quietly sending a message, waiting over 100 years for someone to listen?